Hold on, I gotta get the meeting going. Okay. Well, he can do his other spiel about, oh, you need that to read too.
We're not gonna leave the room though, right? We're.
No, I guess we can stay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Required by Montana law, members of the community are given an opportunity to make brief comments to the board on any matters not included in the agenda. Individuals wishing to be heard shall first be recognized by the chairperson. Individuals, after identifying themselves, will proceed to make brief comments. The board would like to remind everyone that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public. No action may be taken on any matter discussed during the public comment portion of the meeting until such time as the matter is specifically noticed on an agenda and the public has been allowed the opportunity to comment. Thomas, do you have any public comment? Let's move on with our meeting. First item is to approve the minutes for 2 executive sessions held on December 17th, 2004.
May we do them together or do we have to do them separately?
You can do them together.
Okay. I move to adopt the executive session as a summary for both sessions that were held on December 17th, 2024.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I don't believe we can make comment on this, so it just comes back to a vote. Holly, I'll call out when it's time for you to vote. Everyone here in person, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Holly?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. New business evaluation process with Sir Thomas Reynolds.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you, board.
Did you need this?
Yeah, I was gonna see how I can get that up here. BSD boardroom display. Does enter a pin.
We're gonna watch Craven the Hunter.
It should come up. Make sure your source is input or HDMI. I can't remember. Yeah, hit that again. And a lot of times that does it. Yeah, there you go.
So, board, I've been here for almost going on 2 years now. And I just like to, put something in writing, get everybody on the same page for how this process works so that we can get it streamlined so that if, I get hit by a bus one day, Dee Dee, is not here, we can all know what we would.
Lottery, not get hit.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Win the lottery. After I give some back to the school to help build the elementary. I'd like to, I did a lot of research at what other districts are doing and things like that. And just to kind of formalize a process so that it's transparent, fair for everybody. And that it brings back some communication, collaboration between the board, Dee Dee and Carrie and the clerk. So what I have here is kind of our current process. In December, we set a meeting to schedule the evaluation. We send out the surveys to the CERT admin. We send them out to the superintendent. We get them back. Everything's kind of rushed a little bit in this process. And then there's kind of, are we evaluating goals? Are the criteria correct? Things like that. But that's kind of how we're doing it right now. I know Mary Ellen and Holly have worked really hard and established a great foundation for the evaluation metrics and things like that. So I'm super appreciative of all that work and just taking this to the next steps of yeah, but just making sure we're all on page on the evaluation process. Like I said, I've done a lot of research on this through OPI, through what other districts are doing. And, the timeline pretty much starts right after the evaluation happens, where in February or March, the discussion between like the superintendent and the board, they start that long range strategic plan, goals, action plans. In February and March, the evaluation instrument is kind of selected and agreed upon at that time. Goals are finally established. Contract discussions usually happen around June. And this is kind of the part where it kind of, again, flexible. Superintendent completes their self-assessment in August. The board and the superintendent have a formative assessment in September to talk about, I call these check-ins, OPI and other agencies use the education term of formative assessment. I call these check-ins on checking on the progress. So we're not waiting till today to talk about goals that have, where were we at? So it's a continuous communication cycle. So again, my suggestion is that we meet in September to talk about the goals and progress. October, November, we're having another meeting about goals, another formative assessment. December, you have that summative assessment. The trustees complete their evaluation in December. We set the dates for January. And then we kind of pick back up on collecting all the data from our certified admin. And then we just start the cycle back over. Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Mary.
So in June, you have contract discussions. What's that?
So basically, the superintendent signs a 3-year contract.
In June?
No.
But it's listed under June.
Right, but so we're in the contract right now.
Mm-hmm.
So like last year, right? We talked about the superintendent adding another year to their contract so that the 3 years doesn't kind of last. It's always kind of going at every 3 years. We keep it at 3 years until the superintendent and the board decide otherwise. It's standard practice here in Montana for that to happen. And that's where you talk about also compensation at that point as well. So you have that conversation in June.
But it's not finalized. Because you have to offer them a contract by February.
Right, well, we've already offered the contract for 3 years. Right, so we've already offered a contract for 3 years. So this is just a kind of that piece of talking about, well, do we want to add that keep on adding that 3rd year at the end? And talk about compensation.
It's interesting, right? I've been trying to figure out what that timeline looks like also.
But June, why June?
So I think, it could be now, and then we obviously need to back up the evaluation and then have another meeting to talk about the contract unless we do it all at the same meeting. But if you were ever in a situation where you had concerns about your superintendent and you needed to figure that part out, it probably wouldn't work to have it at the same meeting. Hopefully that never happens and we could do that. I think one of the other challenges with looking at the superintendent's contract now is on negotiations years. We don't know where we're headed yet.
Yeah.
And so to talk about compensation changes for the superintendent, I think are premature. Because we don't know what that looks like under the bigger picture. So I guess at least in negotiation years, would see why there would be a reason. And we wouldn't have to wait till June. I mean, it could be earlier in the spring, but I think, there's some validity to that timeline, I think.
June selected maybe because it's the end of the school
End of the fiscal year, right?
End of the fiscal, so the contract starts July 1st. So if anything in the contract we're going to change, you'd have to do it before July 1st. So it could be earlier than that. Yeah.
Well, if you,
Again, the only thing for me, it would be, we've gotten through the year, we've seen the performance through the
Right.
year, and then we can make
Right,
a decision.
right.
Montana law says we have to offer the contract by February.
So, but you've already
already have a
offered,
contract, but-
yeah. If you were gonna if you were
We
gonna
have to do it
stop,
by February.
you have to do it by
Yeah,
February 1st.
exactly. That's
So-
the caveat criteria is about the February deadline, is if you weren't gonna,
But if we don't offer a contract for the third year, it's automatic in the state of Montana.
Correct.
Mhm.
So why and that takes place in February. So
Can I
why
say
are we talking
something?
about in June?
So if you do her contract now and you want to keep it always in a 3-year contract,
Mhm.
then you can't do it till June, because if you did it now, she'd be in a more than a 3-year contract. So you can't add to a year to her contract until you get to July. So, but if you decide not to add a year, which you guys can do, then it's not until the final year of her current 3-year contract that you have to do it by February.
By February.
Yes.
Okay.
And then every other year you can do it anytime you want. It just makes sense to do it in June so that you make that decision and then her new contract starts right away in July for another 3 years. Because if you did it now, it'd be 3 years and 4 months, 5 months, and that's against the law in Montana.
Okay. The
So
reason
that's
I
why
was
they do it.
confused was because we just got that question from
Mhm.
Montana School Boards Association.
Mhm.
So it's really not a concern about the February date until the last year of her contract.
Okay,
Yes. And yeah,
all right. Don't know if I'm in agreement, but
and I think I had that right there in the second bullet, contract action review, if on the third final year of contract. Right. This is why we keep carry
that
around.
sounds so final.
Yeah.
It's terminal.
I mean, it makes sense if it's rolling, we continue to roll that third year. We can't do that till June because otherwise it'll be like 3 years of it. But if it's terminal, if she says, I think I want to be done after this 3 years, or if we say, maybe we need to evaluate, then it's like, okay, then we'll visit in February and say, Art, do you want to add another 3 years? So it makes sense why to do it that way, from a contracting perspective.
Or if you have things you need the superintendent to work on,
Right.
Yeah.
that's why it's there.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is just draft. I can send this to all of you and kind of take some time to think about it. But like I said, I'd like to have some kind of definitive process at some point. So that, yeah, we kind of,
So this is just for the superintendent.
yeah, and I think the clerk would follow something similar.
My contract ends on June 30th as well. So,
But
I can only have a 1-year contract.
But we hire you at that May meeting.
Well, you appoint me, but you don't give me a contract until June.
Right.
Yeah, you don't renew my contract. So you could appoint me, but then not hire me, and then you'd have to appoint somebody else.
Safeguards for you, Carrie?
No, I'm a year-to-year employee.
They're just kind of, something was to go south 3 months into your contract, there's nothing you could do to work out of that. You know what I mean?
Well, you guys would have to have reasonable cause to get
Just
rid of
cause.
me, just cause to get rid of me. And then, yeah, that's it. Otherwise, you're stuck with me until my contract renews June 30th, and then you could not renew it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
That just doesn't give you very much job security.
I've never had it. I've been in the clerk job for over 20 years, and that's just how it is. And that's really how it is for all school employees if you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, except for teachers, because they have the 10-year protection, but I don't worry too much. I feel like I work hard, and hopefully I don't give you a reason to be in that position.
That depends for the Super Bowl.
go Chiefs.
Who you rooting for?
I thought the most exciting thing about the playoffs was the guy that sang the national anthem.
Yeah.
The rest of it, they could all.
Washington, they were like, we're gonna invoke a rule that we can add points if you guys don't behave. And I was like, what rule is this? Like, watching football my whole life. Like, all right.
Now, I just want to go on record saying that this entire evaluation process is subject to change because Holly and I worked this up because we didn't have one.
Yeah.
So Holly and I are going off the board. You can change it
So we
anyway.
should-
And,
We should probably review it anyway.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there was a comment about let's evaluate the superintendent. And one board member said, well, we don't know what the teachers think on some of the comments. And so you need to look probably at the document itself, the instrument.
Yeah, Thomas and I kind of talked about that a little bit last week. I've been meaning to fill Jesse in on that too. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but it was too boilerplate for me. There weren't, it's like, well, I would like more specifics.
Yeah.
For example, like my thing right now is testing scores, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have a goal, normally you'd have a set of goals that each person would have, and you do evaluation against those goals. And they might change year to year. right?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna move, the school's gonna move in a different direction, good or bad, and we may want to change.
Yeah.
or maybe
The goals, and same
priorities,
thing with
Yeah.
Gary. I mean, if the financial situation was different, then, we might have to, there might be more heat on her to do something different.
yeah, it'll be kind of a combination of the two. Like some of it makes sense, like going to public events or, displaying school spirit or something like that. That kind of makes, 0 to 5, but then there's got to be some specifics that we want to see as constituents.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's difficult to figure out. But
I think the hard part for my position too is I have 2 positions and you guys only evaluate me on the district clerk position and Dee Dee evaluates me on the finance director.
Mm-hmm.
And then she makes her recommendation to you guys for renewal of my contract and stuff. So I think that makes it really hard too.
Yes.
I was gonna ask though about things like from a data perspective, like test scores are so weird as far as like evaluation thing, because like year over year, or even like a cycle, like 2 years over 2 or 4, we were talking with, right? We had a meeting at the high school talking about like actually the data on test scores and how like accurate it is, because you have to figure like fundamentally, like I can't compare test scores in, let's say 2020 with test scores today. So it's like so hard as like a reference of like a job well done for teachers or superintendents. Did we raise test scores? Because we have so many confounding factors that are going to play into that. And I'm not even, let's pretend COVID didn't even happen, like not even including something like COVID and sort of the repercussions thereafter of, that, but just in general about like our population and even like teacher turnover and teaching styles. And I'm looking at this because weren't we trying to find a solution of how can we somewhat standardize like our AP score specifically, but that one as like a measure of like value of like our, superintendent stuff is like a really difficult one for me. Cause like all I can think of is how do I measure this truly at a scale of data, right? Because like there's so many factors that we can't say, well, test scores didn't go up, so they're not doing a great job. Because did we change curriculum? What does our school population look like?
that's why they get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I think, I hear what you're saying, but I think that, you've got to be multiple criteria that you're looking at. They might well be doing things really well positively, but there's still a need to have some level of performance improvement. Not that we have to have better than we had in, 10 years ago or anything like that, but we ought to be looking at last year and where we're going forward. But again, one criteria versus, 4 other criteria that are fairly important as well, doesn't mean that you're gonna make a swing of a decision. Just tells everybody this is an important component. This is something that we've got to have our eye on this ball.
It just feels like a weird, like it feels like a district like goal rather than a superintendent goal.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how you could rate a superintendent on did test scores increase.
I know she organizes her administration. She oversees to make sure that teachers are being evaluated.
Yeah, but I
You can
think
look at trends in our schools, like.
Yeah,
let's just say
those
we had
things,
1,000
yeah.
Hispanic kids who didn't speak English. She could come to us and say, this is why our test scores are low, and that would be fair. She
Yeah,
has
exactly.
access to
But
that.
yeah, just as like a point of like, okay, on an evaluation, did test scores go up 1, 2, or 3, right? That's what I mean. Like that seems like
So
not a
Yeah,
good.
well, that's what I'm talking about.
I think that's too much in the weeds, right? So,
Hmm.
so with the superintendent's evaluation, it's gotta be, you're about 10,000 feet. And so I think they kind of say it best here, of defining kind of that, effective educational leaders develop and support rigorous and coherent systems of curriculum instruction. And so how does DD, the superintendent support drive those numbers, basically,
Okay.
looking at it at that level? And so going to that, right, we have our current eval criteria and potential, to think about, because there are definitions to these, and it helps putting a definition with the evaluation criteria. I mean, we can keep the ones that we have, but define what does visionary leadership mean? Instructional leadership.
Climate.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Like how do you want to proceed with, I mean, I could go off on a tangent on about 5 of these right now. How do you want to proceed with or defining? You plan on organizing a group of us?
Well, I just put that in. I was like, we maybe get a committee of the board.
Yeah, I
Together.
think that would be good because I think everything that everybody is saying all makes sense.
Yeah,
And I think we have different perspectives, what we see as a community too, because like I'm in the grade schools, right? And I know, Rocky's often in high school. So I think we have these like different perspectives of what like maybe feedback we're hearing or seeing. And so I think maybe like a committee or something would be really beneficial.
yeah, and how do we, I guess one other thing I was thinking about was, should we be talking to teachers? I mean, there's one flow of information anonymous to be
Right.
from surveys, but sometimes people will tell us things that they would not tell her.
Right.
And how do we present that in a form that's helpful?
Well, I mean, what?
I guess that's a job for the committee, though.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, as far as the teachers are concerned, it's pretty hard to get too much input from the teachers because we're really not allowed to.
Well, there's 3 levels of, yeah,
I mean, that's been the credo of what we've been talking about this, so unless we're gonna change our approach to that.
It's a fair thought, though. Doesn't need to be answered now, but it's something to
I
consider.
mean, we are talking about doing like an evaluation or like a employee engagement type survey. And so something maybe derivative from that.
I think this is a topic that needs to be held at a work session for
Yeah.
the board
Yeah.
and have the board involved in this and not something that we can solve tonight.
Nope,
Right, right.
nope, I was just trying to highlight and get that kind of directive, right? Get that kind of like, hey, look, let's get a meeting together so that we can.
Go to
do
it.
this.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Once again, I've got us off on a tangent.
No worries. That's all I have. I just kind of wanted to, felt like it was the opportune time to talk about it while I have everybody's attention. And we will set it, if that's what we want, is to set up kind of a,
Yeah, we can add something to the meeting agenda or something like that. We'll just talk about it in the next meeting and see who wants to volunteer to do it. Sound fair?
Do you want to set up a committee or do you want to do a workshop session?
I think it should be the whole board
Yeah, I like that.
because the committee was Holly and me.
Mm-hmm.
And we did our perspectives, but if
Yeah.
all of you are involved, you're going to have much more to say.
Thank you, Thomas. This was more than what I was hoping for. So-
Okay. So now, oh, it's recording again, but it didn't say recording, but it's showing that it's recording.
So you're going back.
Okay, we are now in open session. We have completed the clerk's evaluation, Carrie Fisher's evaluation. And now we will proceed back into closed session because we have determined the matter involves individual privacy. And that such privacy demands protection of the individual and that little, if anything, would be gained by publicly discussing the information, disclosing the information to be discussed, and that the demand for individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure in this matter. So we are now back in closed session.